Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Testing is done in Bahrain and the takeaways are relatively clear. Red Bull are going to be nigh on impossible to stop it seems next weekend. Ferrari have their fair share of problems to solve. Aston Martin clearly the best of the rest, but Mercedes again making headlines. George Russell stating their car's okay right now, but it's going to take until race 6 in May with their big upgrade package when that arrives for them to really start to win races. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. And let's dive right in. There really isn't even that much to say on Red Bull because they've been so good all weekend, had no issues at all, topped the timing charts with both Verstappen and Perez on basically all compounds, not showed really any signs of any issues with the car at all, which is certainly scary for the opposition with every other team having some issues. Red Bull have just been so smooth. Verstappen says this car is significantly better than last year's car that he won 15 races with out of 22. So I don't know if he's going to go to break the record again, but honestly, as it stands, it is looking a little bit ominous for the season. Mercedes do expect to improve. Ferrari have some problems to solve. Aston Martin, who knows where they'll be, but Schumacher was again gassing them up today and saying they're looking very competitive. Fernando in particular is not too far off the pace. And look at these numbers as well. This is a stint that Alonso did on the C1 tyre, which will certainly, I think, be used next weekend. That is the harder compound of the three that are going to be used in Bahrain, of the C1, the C2 and the C3. The C3 is going to be the soft actually in Bahrain, even though most of the faster laps today were done on C4 or C5 tyres. But this is on the C1. We'll probably see quite a lot of this tyre next weekend, I'd imagine. Look at the consistency in these laps. 37.6, 8, 8. This is obviously a 1 minute before these tyres, just for brevity. 8, 7, 7, 6, 7, 5, 6, 5, 5, 6, 284, 284 back to back. Then 0.3, 0.3. I mean, look at these. 2 laps in a row, followed by another 2 laps in a row within a thousandth of a second. Then a 0.0, 0.2, 0.0. And these are very fast times for the harder tyre as well. So that is pretty impressive stuff from Aston Martin. They might be on lower fuel here than some of their rivals, but the consistency that Alonso was able to put in here. And of course, over this stint, the car gets lighter, but that should be countered maybe by some tyre degradation, which maybe Aston Martin weren't really seeing here. So they're looking very good indeed, certainly on this evidence. In terms of pure pace, they weren't quite there today with their rivals, but well, we'll see who their rivals actually are, where they can get into the top. Now, let's talk Ferrari, some of their problems. So this is their new rear wing. At the top here, you can see it's only held up by one strut thing now, rather than it used to be 2. This, I guess, is to reduce some degree of drag. They did, though, suffer some DRS malfunctioning issues with it and therefore had to put on the old rear wing again because it wasn't fully working with this only single actuator, I'm guessing is what was happening here. So not exactly ideal for Ferrari. And also, there's some issues with the, well, balance, let's just say, in the traction in the corners. Last year, the SF, or the F175, sorry, was rapid in the corners and it was acceleration was so good, traction was so good, better than the Red Bull for sure at the start of the season. Struggled a bit in the straight line though. Apparently this year though, the Ferrari have focused on straight line speed, but their performance in the corners has therefore suffered. As Leclerc said, the car this year is quicker on the straights, but maybe struggling more in the corners. And we've seen that Ferrari have topped pretty much all the speed trap data so far. Red Bull probably have more in the tank, as do Ferrari with their engine, as probably do Mercedes. But still, Ferrari have been topping the timesheets in the speed trap, and it seems to be because they focused on more straight line speed and less drag in their car design. However, that is not helping them right now in the corners where downforce is necessary, and therefore they've still got some things to figure out there and didn't end off the weekend in an ideal scenario. There was also questions about their tyre degradation not looking as good as Red Bull's was, maybe not looking as good as Aston Martin's was, we just saw there, and also potential reliability problems. This is what we say with Ferrari. They've got a few things they've got to sort out to really be competitive. Their car may be fast, but they've got some problems to solve, especially when Bottas pulled over with a horrible sounding, to be honest, it kind of sounded like the gearbox went, but they looked into this and apparently indeed it was a engine failure for the Ferrari engine in the car, or a power unit failure at the very least. Now, of course, they can change the power unit for the race start. Obviously, this doesn't count for the allocation for the season, but yeah, still, this has definitely caused concern at Ferrari that, again, after all the reliability problems that Alfa Romeo had last year with the Ferrari power unit, it's happened again here in practice with an engine just taking the L, and now all the sources are saying that, yeah, this was a Ferrari power unit failure. So again, that's not ideal. Now let's talk Mercedes. So many storylines around this team right now. They had a relatively good day, all things considered. Of course, in the morning session when it's hotter on the track, the cars are going to be a bit slower, but Hamilton put in a 30.6, I believe, in the end on the softest compound. Bit of a question whether the C5 or the C4 is actually quicker, just because, okay, the C5 should be quicker, but Hamilton was clearly struggling a bit in the last sector where the tyres were going away from him, so there's an argument to say the C4 is actually the marginally quicker quicker tyre around here because, you know, at least it keeps itself together over the course of the entire lap. But he was at this point a couple of tenths up on where the Ferraris were. I think Russell was a couple of tenths down on them earlier in the day. Then Perez went even faster than Hamilton, quite significantly so. But it looked okay, the Mercedes today. Certainly they've fixed some of their issues overnight. The car seemed to be in a marginally better spot. And, you know, all the difficulties they worked on overnight, and they were working like all night on this, I imagine, to solve the issues that we discussed they had yesterday. They made a good step on that and are looking like they'll at least be competitive towards the front of the field at the start of the season. Where they'll be, though, probably behind certainly Red Bull and maybe Ferrari as well, maybe an Aston Martin, who honestly knows how good they are right now. So apparently, though, the W14 has not been particularly convincing for Mercedes in the wind tunnel. And we heard even, you know, when they revealed the car, that there are further upgrades to bring. Like this car we see right now for the W14 is not the one that will be arriving in a few races' time. I think the key for Mercedes was to realize, is this car a decent platform, right? Is this a good building block to go off of? Because last year's W13 certainly wasn't. Way too inconsistent, way too volatile, way too difficult to realize what it's going to do. The W14 seems much better in that regard, but there are still problems to solve, and they're certainly slower than where they should be. Toto Wolff, I believe, said, yeah, our problem is really the car's actually not bad, but it's just kind of slow, and we've got progress to make. We know Mercedes are arguably the best team at development on the entire grid, and they've already got things in the works so they believe will take them in the right direction, but for now, they're not sold at all they're going to be winning anything really anytime soon. Now, it's a long season, 23 races. They can afford a slow start if they pick it up massively, which is expected. They're so many months behind on their development compared to the other teams. They've got to catch that amount up. They've then got to catch up the additional development Red Bull have been able to make with the time that Mercedes sorted out their porpoising in. And even if you look at the timing here for Checo, Perez put in a 1:30.3. Last year, the pole time from Leclerc was a 1:30.5. So already we saw times in excess of the pole time from last year. I said yesterday that next weekend in qualifying we'll get down to the 1:29 lows. Might be quicker than that, to be honest, based on this evidence. Yes, the C3 tyre will be on next weekend as the soft, rather than the even softer C4 they were using today. And just a comparison here, right? So this is the Red Bull flow viz. You guys can see the green on the side of the car. As I say, I don't know really anything about aerodynamics. All I know is that looks kind of good, the way the green's flying there. I don't know what's going on with this Mercedes, but the flow viz probably either wasn't meant to do this or it's not exactly ideal. And look, changes are coming. Lewis Hamilton even confirmed, yes, we hit the ground running to a regard. And obviously they did a lot of laps today, right? They put in about 145 or so laps, Mercedes, today. So certainly that was a good step forward for them on the struggles they had on day 2. But he does say some of the balance limitations of last year's car are still here. So it might be a better platform, but there still are problems to solve in that W14. Which isn't really a surprise, but I'm sure the question is, how far off Red Bull actually are they? Because if they're 7 or 8 tenths off like they were last year, it might be chalked. If they're within 4 tenths of a second, then the season still has legs potentially in terms of someone actually matching back to Verstappen this year, which is again going to be a challenge, it seems. So Toto Wolff says, yes, new parts are being looked at. New parts are in the wind tunnel ready to go. One advantage Mercedes do have is that they've got more testing time, right? Not just because Red Bull had the penalty, but also just naturally the way the rules work nowadays. The lower you finish in the Constructors' Championship, the more testing time you get. Mercedes probably have about 30% more testing time than Red Bull do, so that will help them in terms of putting new parts in the wind tunnel and stuff. And George Russell says, look, the car right now might not be perfect, but it's important you don't throw everything in one basket when it comes to delivering the optimum package for race 1. It's about having a package that you can easily develop from and maybe find greater performance later down the line. So I think that's Mercedes' plan, that this car was never intended to be the fastest version the W14 can be. It was about proving this is a solid platform to improve off of, which I believe is what they've taken away. But I'm sure they'll not be so happy to see that Red Bull have basically been indomitable the entire weekend. George Russell goes on to say this season is going to be won or lost midway to the end of the season. It's not going to be won or lost in the first 5 races. We saw that last year, right, with Ferrari, the start they had, and Red Bull then bouncing back, and Verstappen said after 3 races last year that it was going to take him 45 races to catch up to Leclerc, and he only had 20 or so left. Of course, it only took him about 10 races to catch up to Leclerc and almost put the championship to bed. But he says, look, as much as we'd want to win next weekend in Bahrain, we know it's more important that we've got the right car come race 6. And I think this is probably a fair point from Russell, right? If you've got a winning car by race 6, the championship is still on. If you've not got a winning car by race 10, then it's probably going to be over for you. So Mercedes know they're going to start out behind, but they've got upgrades coming thick and fast at the start of the season, and by race 6, they believe they're going to be able to win races. I think Russell said that the winning in Bahrain is going to be a stretch, but by race 6, when the upgrades arrive, it's going to be a big deal. And that's what Russell went on to say, that basically they'll be fully competitive by race 6, which is all the way in May. We've got 3 races in March, then there's a massive break in April where the Chinese Grand Prix was meant to be, then it goes Baku, then it goes Miami, and then I think it goes to Imola, which is the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, and then there's Spain and other Grand Prix circuits around Europe. So for that European stint, which is very important, that's when they will have their full car, we believe, with the upgrades that are coming. But for now, there definitely is still something to be desired there, and Ted Kravitz also confirmed on the broadcast that after talking with Mike Elliott from Mercedes, the B version that was discussed the other day is not really going to be a B version, but there is going to be further developments, and it will look different when their upgrade packages arrive, potentially the side pods, but it's not going to be a Red Bull-esque design here they're going to fall back on. It's just a further evolution that, once they've confirmed the car is pretty good this weekend, they can take it to the next level. Wanted to mention just before we look at the timings on the weekends, the straight line speed. So as we saw today, yes, Ferrari are the fastest. Perez actually only at 3.22, so you'd imagine there's more to come from the rocket ship Red Bull. And then we look at Mercedes, 3.17, 3.14. I don't think this is all about, okay, firstly, they probably had the engine turned down. Secondly, the car in a straight line wasn't that fast last year anyway, although they did mention the fact that they've tried to improve its straight line speed efficiency. The other part, though, was that Mercedes, I think, were running more rear wing than other teams, which they might not do when it comes to the actual Grand Prix. So we'll see about that. But yeah, it's quite interesting that Hamilton was so close to the top times, despite being significantly down in straight line speed, which, is probably partly wing angle, partly engine, maybe just partly the car isn't that quick in a straight line again, although they said they probably tried to solve those issues. These were the timings then on the final day. Perez at 1:30.5, Hamilton about 3/10 or so back, then Bottas put in a good lap towards the end, Leclerc, Sainz, Tsunoda, Magnussen. So, yeah, pretty interesting. Like, the Haas is looking pretty good, I can't lie. I watched Magnussen's lap, and I was kind of impressed by the way that car was handling. A lot of these other laps were earlier in the day, so less representative. But yeah, I will say that the Haas again might be kind of competitive. The McLaren, it looked a bit of a struggle, to be honest. And, then we get the Williams, which is probably not going to be having a good time yet again. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Loads of new storylines, I'm sure, for you guys over the coming days. So don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe or all that good stuff. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.